Hello, welcome to another series of Benevolent Business. I'm Hayden, your host. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see the interesting setting I'm in. I'm actually in Jamaica volunteering for 6 weeks, so hello from here. Let's get stuck in with the first episode. I'm interviewing Ceri Hand, who is someone that has had a career widespread across the entire art industry.
Mindset and the emotional roller coaster that people go through in their creative careers. And that's something we don't get taught at art school. Consistency of practice is one of the most fundamental rules for a sustainable career. One of the biggest myths, I think, is that the reason that successful people do is because they leap before they're ready, and it's because they systematize the things that are the most important. Don't just wait for a gallery to find you. Maybe if I'd have known how hard some of those systems or structures or how hard those odds were stacked against me, I think perhaps I might have thought twice. Actually, this is kind of stuff that keeps great people out of places that I now know are vital for sustaining a healthy, balanced lifestyle. I remember making perfume out of like rose petals and water and flogging it to all the neighbours. And I don't know what kind of precocious brat I thought I was, but it's very funny. It takes years to build up value for your artist.
If you are someone that's interested in the arts at all, whether that's making a living as an artist, being involved as a curator, running the gallery, owning the gallery, this will be hugely valuable for you. Or even just anywhere in business, this can be hugely impactful, especially when it comes back to really the core of what you're doing and why you're doing it. Ceri, welcome to Benevolent Business. Thank you for giving me your time and coming on.
Thanks so much, Hayden. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Even though you've got COVID, you're still coming up and still on Zoom and happy to have the conversation despite being a bit under the weather. So thank you as well.
Thanks so much. Yeah. Well, I think we're all going through it at the moment. And actually, one of the things that keeps us all buoyant is connection, right? So actually, it was really nice for you to reach out. So I'm really happy to be here, and it's lifted my COVID-infused day. So thanks.
Oh, amazing. I'm glad to hear. So jumping straight in, I suppose, as we literally was just talking about a minute ago, in terms of why I reached out to you and why I wanted to have this conversation. So I'm going to start straight away. When it comes to like coaching and mentoring, is it something I only learned recently that there is coaches and mentors for artists? And this is all based around myself of starting now in art again. When it comes to reaching out to a coach, when it comes to reaching out to a mentor, is this something that you would say, as an artist, get yourself a little bit established, have an understanding of what you want to do, and then start to reach out? Or is it something where you can go, right, I want to be an artist. It's like in my circumstance, kind of done a bit of time at uni, went to college, have painted, have got an idea what I want to do. I've done a few canvases, and I'm like, is it a bit too early for me to say maybe I should try a coach or a mentor? Or do you think, no, like from the get-go, have one, it will only help you? Sure.
Great question. Well, I think to be honest, everybody should have a coach in their lives. I think that just like sport people, everybody improves with a bit of self-improvement, but also a commitment to kind of learning and having a champion, or having somebody who's a critical friend who can kind of reflect things back to you, but also help you see the limitations of your own thinking. I think that helps to push through your own sort of journey to date, but also take more risks. And in relationship to art and coaching and mentoring, I would say I particularly work with creatives who are a very particular point in their careers. So I would say intermediate to more experienced artists. And that's partly because I've built up a 30-year career, I guess. A lot of the tips, tools, tricks that I might use in my coaching and mentoring with creatives blend knowledge of the industry, but with also helping them to overcome their mindset and the emotional roller coaster that people go through in their creative careers. And that's something we don't get taught at art school. So I would say, in terms of me personally, I work with people who have already put some of the graft in, some of the work in, just because I know that I can help them take their careers to the next stratosphere by having kind of some intense time together over, 6 months or even a year, we can actually take things to the next level. But I've actually coached and mentored artists from all different walks of life. So I spent thousands of hours with creatives over, since 2014 in particular, when I first started Artist Mentor. And I now recommend more emerging, sort of, I would say, let's say, early stage career artists to some associates that work with me, who are specifically trained at helping people go from kind of early stage to mid-career. I think there are courses that I do which help beginner and sort of early career artists. So I'm doing one this week on preparing for studio visits and pricing and selling your work, for example. So those courses really are helpful to any kind of level artist, but they come from having an arts industry insider knowledge of how it's done at a very high level. So I do want to help as many people as possible. So I'm actually blending mentoring, coaching, and course materials with a new course that I'm going to be launching next year. So I think basically people who have demonstrated commitment to themselves, they've backed themselves with their own practice first, they've built a little bit of knowledge around what their voice is, what they've got to say about the way they see the world and their experience of life, and that they're prepared to kind of jump on that emotional roller coaster that we all have to navigate, because actually managing your mindset is one of the biggest challenges of being an artist. It's an amazing life. It's having a creative adventure in life is the best choice that you could make if you're a creative person. But actually, we're sort of sold this idea of the lone genius. And actually, I think we get further together. And I believe wholeheartedly that community makes an enormous difference to creatives, not just through networks and helping each other or lifting each other up, but also to support each other thrive and earn money, earn a living, but also really push your practice as far as it can go. So in short, I can work with anybody. I'm currently choosing to work with people who have done a bit of time on themselves to start, and I'm providing access to things through the website posts and the new course that I'm developing. So I'm hoping to be able to help even more people. My goal is 100,000 in the next few years. So we've supported over 2,000 people in the last couple of years. So yeah.
Ambitious goal, 100,000. You've definitely reassured me of what my own thoughts were there in terms of, because that was something like for myself of thinking mentoring, coaching, is this the right time, or do I need to sort of build more of a portfolio, more of a name? And you've definitely reassured me there, because I was kind of thinking, well, if I was a coach or a mentor or someone like in your position, I'd want to see someone had put at least some of the work into and persevered and committed certainly a length of time, at least like a year or something, and say, look, I've got a portfolio, I've been working, I've been going to these galleries, I've been trying to make these connections. But so in terms of making a living as an artist, would you say, I'm going to say, what is like the most important skill to have? Or is it a number that you, or like the most important three skills that you think are to have? Because as you said there's so many things to combat with it in terms of your mindset fundamentally, in terms, I think there's a lot of loneliness involved in it because you are solitary creating artworks, but also like when I think about it now and being in business and now transitioning to art, to me it seems like to make a living as an artist, it's more about your ability to walk into a room and make wonderful connections and walk away, leave that room with people going, I like that person, I want to speak to them again, and I'm curious what they're doing with the art, more so than your ability to produce art. Or is it the ability to just pick up the phone and just call, just that no matter how many times someone says no, it's your determination just to say, I'm going to keep trying regardless, that doesn't matter how many galleries say no, we don't care, you're no good. What is like the key skill or the most important skill you think for an artist or an emerging artist trying to become established and make a living?
There's quite a few things that go into being successful on your own terms. And I think you're right, there are some things that people can borrow from what people do in business or different kinds of cultures. But I think the first and fundamental thing is that you've got something you want to say, something you want to communicate with the world, that you have a sense of where it comes from. So having a sense of what your story is, how you want to tell it, what medium you want to use, and what's that kind of bit of difference or special sauce that you want to bring to the table. So you had your own business, right? And you probably know that obviously in differentiating yourself, firstly, you have to get a real sense of what value you want to offer. So who do you want to help? The same is true when you're making your own artwork. It's really, you know, what is it that you're compelled or obsessed by that you can't stop from making or saying? Now, it could range from paintings to sculptures to videos to animation. It doesn't matter what your creative strand is, that there's something about the way you see, feel, and experience the world is particular to you. And actually drawing out that and actually getting a real sense of this is why I make, this is how I make, this is what it's for, and this is who I want to connect with. That takes a bit of time, which is why I'm saying that actually this kind of percolation of your skills as a creative is important, because you might have that bolt of genius for like one series, and then actually getting back there and finding a new series of work inside that is just as kind of, you know, going to light as many people up. Takes time, you know, and so consistency of practice is one of the most fundamental rules for a sustainable career. So finding your route to practicing daily, if you can, whether it's 5 minutes on the, you know, waiting on the bus at the bus stop, and it's doodling on your phone, through to actually sketching at a certain time of night, finding your groove, finding your time, whether it's a studio, which is just a broom closet, or whether it's literally in your mum's bedroom, you know, wherever it is, it's finding the space for you to create, and that you have an inspiring kind of range of stuff around you that makes you feel alive, that makes you feel in the zone, in flow. So whatever you do, you want to get yourself into flow as regularly as possible. Now, that doesn't mean, like Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote sort of Big Magic, you know, she said that she was actually relieved that she had a job to take the pressure off having to earn from her practice, and that meant she could develop her kind of style and her flavour without that added pressure. But I think in reality, it's important for, it doesn't, if you chunk it down, you can actually have a longer sustainable career by showing up and improving your skills regularly. Finding a tribe, finding the people who like the same kind of weird stuff as you, or it might not be weird, but that's my particular penchant, is for really strange things. So I like hanging out with other people who like really strange things. And so the kind of art that I like is the kind of art that takes me to somewhere I couldn't possibly get to on my own. The kind of art somebody else might like is to improve their domestic environments. They might like nice paintings or nice sculptures in their home that make them feel alive, make them feel good. There is somebody for everybody. One of the biggest myths, I think, is that us creative introverts, because most of us have extrovert streaks, but actually we also have incredible creative introvert streaks, and that's the thing that we nurture in our studio. So we need that alone time, we need that time to fuel our soul, to make amazing work. So it's really important to know that even if you are shy, even if you are an introvert, there are methods that you can try to help you connect and find your tribe. So I would agree with you, but I know that a lot of people listening would feel utterly crushed by the thought that they have to walk into a room and connect with people. So I want to just make it clear that actually I know, because I'm also a creative introvert, and I've learned and overcome shyness and imposter syndrome and all the things that it takes in order to connect with people on their terms. And so that's what I teach quite often, is to, instead of thinking about an enormous vast sea of strangers, that you're just thinking about a small number of super friendly people who want what you've got and they're just waiting for you. So finding your tribe and investing the time and inviting people to look at your work on a regular basis, that's something that I would really love to encourage everybody to do. That You don't have to wait to be discovered. You can invite people into your studio, whether it's in real life or online, on a regular basis. And it doesn't have to be just people from the art world. It could be musicians, it could be illustrators, dancers, poets, but also the wider population. You know, people who love art are doctors, nurses, lawyers, people who love to surround themselves with art, but they want to get to know artists. And you'll get amazing feedback on a regular basis if you kind of continuously think about who could light me up, who could I have an amazing conversation with that would make me feel excited and alive, and it would fill you up for the year ahead. Think about planning your studio visits so that you've got work in progress that you're sharing, and that you're introducing people to some of the ideas that you're thinking about. You don't have to wait till you're perfect to start this process. The reason that successful people do is because they leap before they're ready, and it's because they systematize the things that are the most important. So for you to build this and flex this creative muscle in lots of different environments, you need to be flexing the muscle of the thing that scares you the most. And if that's talking to people about your work, or getting to know new people, finding people who like your work, then that's the thing you need to practice more. Instead of handing the keys over to somebody else so they can drive your car, as in, don't just wait for a gallery to find you. You can do some of this work in advance, even if you're shy. And that's what I help people with daily. So I know the techniques that we use can help with that. But I hope that answers some of your questions.
That's a huge amount of value packed into a very candid answer. Like, I feel like I could just listen back to that quite a few times and just learn something new every time I listen to it. It's amazing that I'm learning like different industries I've been in business, in trying to create a podcast, in trying to build a YouTube channel. Only some of them have had success in, but in art as well. Like, you're talking about key skills there that can help you build a career, and a lot of it is evident in all of those industries that I've been involved in. And it's like long-term consistency and finding a way to build the right connections and have really great connections with people. So if you're consistent for a long period of time at what you're trying to do, whether that's a podcast, whether that's becoming an artist, you're just always working on something, always improving, always looking at what you're doing and how you can better yourself in it, and then always just trying to reach out to different people and have conversations to see how you can help them, how they can help you, and just build from there. In your career, Ceri, you've done pretty much everything in art, like run galleries, being an artist yourself, mentored artists. And throughout your vast experience, what component specifically gave you the greatest lessons when you look back on your, you said 20-something year career, 20, 30 years career?
30 years.
30 years.
Yes. Well, I would say one of the biggest things that I'm grateful for, I guess, is that I'm probably just as scared as the next person about new things. But I have embraced failure I don't really believe in it, but for all intents and purposes, I kind of throw myself into things before I'm ready. And there's something about learning on the job, which is kind of terrifying, but also, it's that heady mix of naivety and joy and enthusiasm and passion. And whilst there may be a fear that I'm not quite ready, and so I have to work extra hard, I have to graft extra hard, I've kind of just done that all the way through my career, I suppose. So I have done pretty much every job in the art world in some for a reason, I guess. Now I look back on it, I have this holistic kind of view of the structures and systems in the art world. But I didn't realise, I don't think, that the odds were so stacked. And I say this not to go on too much of a political rant, but when I went to art college, I thought everybody at art college wanted to be an artist. And I thought, probably suspected that everyone was left-wing, but of course that's not true. And I had lots of kind of crazy ideas that we were, going to change the world, and which I still believe that creatives can change the world. And I'm 100% committed to supporting them do that and make a huge impact for the better. I guess I didn't know anything about wealth and the impact of wealth on the market. I didn't know anything about the art market. I didn't know anything about how to earn money or how to have a sustainable career. I was literally just thought I'm going to be an artist in the studio for the rest of my life. I guess the reason that I'm on this circuitous answer to your question is because maybe if I'd have known how hard some of those systems or structures or how hard those odds were stacked against me, I think perhaps I might have thought twice. So some of the hardest lessons I've learned are through that blind optimism and that grit and determination and hard work, burning the candle at both ends, can overcome lack of money, lack of knowledge, lack of support, lack of training, all the things in the art world that so many of us, through our passion and enthusiasm for it, we're not remunerated so well. We're not given the time and space to come up with our best ideas. We're expected to be the creative, the administrator, the writer, the journalist, the marketeer, the salesperson. All of those things require very different skills. And I guess one of the reasons that I wanted to learn every element of the arts is because I couldn't see people do specialize. They do have, things that they're really brilliant at. But actually, if you don't have knowledge, you don't come out of the womb born into a wealthy family, or you don't have a trust fund, or you don't have somebody backing you, then actually this is kind of stuff that keeps great people out of places. I think I learned the hard way by working too hard. I burnt myself out loads of times. I probably went up against people that on retrospect, if I'd have known the reality, then perhaps I wouldn't have gone in head to head with them. I think I was brought up with a sort of left-wing socialist teacher who specialised in supporting special needs kids, and a mum who campaigned for women's rights and set up lots of women's refuges. And so I guess this idea of being part of society, being part of culture, I was brought up with musicians. But this idea that people don't have money and don't bring value if they don't have money is kind of nonsense, I guess. So, but I think now I know what I know, I want to share it with everybody, because the biggest challenges have been where my personal resource, my personal well of energy, I guess, I invested in helping build organizations or build teams or build people, and it was naive not to put some of the other things in place that I now know are vital for sustaining a healthy, balanced lifestyle.
You touched a bit on politics there and wealth that I want to come on to, but one thing I want to ask you, Ceri, before that is, obviously in these different components within the art industry, being an artist, curating, running galleries, we've learned about your challenges, but which one brought you the most inner happiness? Which sector for you?
Well, I do actually get happiness from everything that I do. I know that sounds really cheesy, but I wouldn't have answered that years ago, because I now see that what I'm doing now, which brings me probably the most pleasure, like that actually I am doing what I should have been doing, have been doing, but the sort of helping other people to be brilliant. I think that's something that I've just always loved doing in one way or another. And I guess I mistook that idea that you have to work really hard in order to be happy. That was mixed up in my mind, I think. That idea that you have to graft to be happy. You don't have to graft to be happy. I've been happy all the way through my career. I've learned amazing things. But if I'm really honest, I think I liked running my own gallery and being my own boss now. So I've learned loads from working with other people, from helping other people, but I am fundamentally a creative person myself. So I love running at my own pace. I love running as quickly as artists do. I love being able to make decisions. I like innovating. And really, I think I was always entrepreneurial from being a kid. But I just didn't realize that the kind of entrepreneurialism I was looking for, which, to speak to your podcast title, The Benevolent Business, is really thinking that you could help other people earn money to do good in the world, and you could also help creatives to earn money to do in the world. And so I guess when I had my own gallery, I was trying to do that, and now I'm trying to do that. So I think probably now, because I'm also old enough and ugly enough to realize that the space that I've got around my time actually really helps me feel creative. And I never afforded myself that over all the years. I crammed everything in as if literally it was my last day on earth. So every day I lived like it was going to be my last. And there are lots of reasons for that. But I think now I feel like I'm working super hard. I'm helping lots of people, but I really, I have some space and time to do other things.
That's interesting. I wondered if your answer would be when you're actually creating a piece yourself and you just have that time to create and not have any pressures. But now I suppose it's, unless that's the business entrepreneurial side of you, because it sounds more like you thrive on, or the happiness is in helping elevate others and actually having challenge to your day to day. The idea of sitting there peacefully with no challenge and no sort of barriers to overcome doesn't bring you that joy.
So yes, well spotted. That's a really great point. I do like inventing things and finding new things. So it's all about new territories for me. But now you've mentioned it, one of my favourite moments in my life was when I was doing my degree, and I was on the final year. I had quite a tough time during my degree because my dad died just before I went to college. And I think by the time I got to the third year, I found my groove, found my mojo. And somehow I ended up from painting and textiles in the printmaking department, which was really an inspiring place to be, run by some amazing, wonderful people. And I just had a group of friends and a group of people around me that just loved what they did, and we had a fantastic time. And I loved making, and I was obsessed with making, I guess, really thick works like lino, but they were prints. And then I went and ran a studio group after that. So again, I was with really like-minded people, but people who were all making lots of different things. So you're right, there's something in that, seeing what's possible and making the impossible possible, that I love doing, whether I'm working with an organization or even non-arts people that I coach, that actually it's finding their special sauce and uncovering what they haven't spotted they're capable of yet, and saying, what if this was possible, and then how might we make that happen? So kind of making ludicrous things happen. That's what I like doing.
Hope you're enjoying the conversation. I'm just interrupting we don't have any official sponsors on the podcast, so I'm going to use this opportunity to shout about some benevolent businesses that I see in the world, that I use myself personally, that I want to encourage you to try out and just get the best out of what businesses have to offer. So I'm going to be shouting about Huel. I became a hooligan a few months ago, and it was actually because they sponsored Diary of a CEO podcast with Stephen Bartlett, and Stephen Bartlett was always screaming about it and talking about it. So yes, of course, there's huge benefits. I tried it out purely based on the idea that as I'm trying to become more and more plant-based, and I'm vegetarian, but I'm trying to be more vegan, Huel is a great way for me to kind of increase that, as it's completely plant-based, it's vegan. So it's a way for me to, I don't use it as a meal supplement, but I do use it as a meal supplement, but I do use it as a way to just get more protein and more vitamins and minerals into my diet on a daily basis. It's been a huge help for me. The biggest thing, Before I talk to you about the biggest benefit, I'll mention some of the downsides. Really, is I started by trying the ready-to-drink Huels, and I have to be honest, they are disgusting. They taste far. Anyone that can say they taste nice, I just can't agree with. Don't understand how you can enjoy the taste of it. Something must be wrong with your taste buds. But I pursued, kept trying, and in the end, I bought the bags where you mix it yourself. I got the black edition with the extra protein. Those I do get along with a lot better. But do be prepared with that. It is something that the taste isn't there, but the health benefits are definitely there when you actually go through the ingredients and what it's full of. It is incredible what they can fit into one drink, being 400 calories, despite the fact it's 40 grams of protein. It's got 26 vitamins and minerals in it. And the biggest benefit I've seen is my hobby skateboarding. Straight away I found if I drank a Huel, I was suffering a lot with like fatigue, so I would go skate, come home, and the next day like my thighs would be aching, legs are aching all over just from like wearing myself out. Yet I found if I drank a Huel, because of all the nutrients I'm getting and the extra protein of course, my legs were fine. My recovery time went from like a day or two to 0. I didn't need any recovery time. I could go skate day after day. And in fact, I'm in Jamaica right now on a 6-week trip volunteering. I've had brought Huel with me, which again helps out massively. It's just a way for me to boost the nutrients I'm getting on a day-to-day basis. And I literally have run out the last few days, and I've noticed my legs are aching where I'm trying to skate, but because I'm not getting my Huel each day, I'm aching. So I can't wait to get home, get a fresh batch. So check it out for yourself. Let me know what you think, if you like it, if you don't. And of course, the other thing I will mention is I did talk about the taste and not liking it so much. However, you can mix it up, create all kinds of different shakes and whatnot. People have done some incredible things, so check them out on Instagram. You'll get all kinds of inspiration there. Back to the podcast. Wow. You mentioned entrepreneurial characteristics since you was a child and that you've always had that kind of spirit. So I'm curious of the anecdote. What was your first ever entrepreneurial sort of activity kind of thing? Like, so for me, the first thing I ever did in terms of that I suppose was entrepreneurial was when I was 9 and my mum worked at Boots and she used to bring home all the promotional stuff, and one day she came home with a box full of it was Nicorette stress balls. So it was like a promotion for anti-smoking. They were handing out like free stress balls with like Nicorette branding. So I filled my school bag up and took them into school and would sell them to kids for whatever, if they had 10p, if they had 20p. And so I'd make a couple of quid, and then they would throw them around at break and lunch and stuff, and then they'd just lose them, and then I'd go around at the end of break, pick them back up, put them back in my bag again, and just sell them on again. And I just did that until the box ran out of rugby balls, and I went off to secondary school by then. But like that was kind of my earliest memory and the first thing I can recall doing. But for you, what was your earliest entrepreneurial memory?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. Two things come to my mind. One, which was we moved from Shropshire up to Loughborough when I was about 7, and I just got to know the new kids in the school, and I remember making perfume out of like rose petals and water and flogging it to all the neighbours around where I lived, which they dutifully did, which was very nice. I think it's 10p a file, I think it was something. It was quite expensive now I think about it. That was years ago. And then this is probably the difference in terms of your brilliant entrepreneurial streak, which actually made you money, whereas the next one that I'm going to tell you, which was creative but didn't earn me any money, which was back in the day, Swan Vestas matches, you used to have like a little voucher that if you saved up for them, you could save a swan. And so I convinced the headmaster of the new school that I just started to let me put a painted box that I made with a painted swan on it and with a hole in, asking all the kids to get their parents to donate the vouchers of Swan Vestas so that we could save some swans, and that went down quite well. So I guess that it's those kinds of things. But I set up a magazine at that school and all kinds of things when I was, I think I might have even been younger than 7. So yeah, it was always like inventing something or coming up with something that wasn't there before and just doing the best version of it. And even for that magazine, actually, I found years later some of the articles that I'd written when I was like 7 or 8, and I don't know what kind of precocious brat I thought I was, but It's very fun. It's very funny, you know. But that's, I mean, that's what I love about just trying stuff. Why not? Why the hell? Why the hell shouldn't we? You know.
I love that. That you just like earlier on when you mentioned entrepreneurial characteristics since a child, I was so excited to ask the question, and that was you didn't disappoint with the answer. There were some really interesting stories of like, yeah, they're very creative. I love the swan thing. That's better than making money. Just like as a like 7 year old, just being like, I want to help save swans, and then just being able to approach your headmaster and
Yeah.
suggest it to them. That's pretty cool. That's really incredible. Which it feels like I'm going on a damper to my next point. That was because you mentioned earlier, you alluded to like politics and wealth within the art industry, and I'm not really sure what the structure how I want to ask the question, but it's just capitalism and the art world, and they obviously meet
Yeah.
in an interesting way for the benefit of some and to the detriment of many others. What can you just touch on your thoughts around capitalism within the art world?
Yeah. Wow. That's a big question, Hayden.
That's just a podcast in itself.
Yeah, this is my perspective. So I am an eternally optimistic person. So all of the people in the networks that I have built over the years are full of people who genuinely believe that art and culture makes the world a better place to be.
Hmm.
So I have lots of friends without any money. I have lots of friends who have lots of money. And fundamentally, I think, you know, we all come in and go out of life the same way. So, however, of course, there are systems and structures that exclude some people from our society. And it's an interesting thing in terms of the art market, because all of the people that got into art for those lovely, you know, sort of reasons that we've been talking about, which is that it lifts your soul, it helps you, it shows a mirror to the world, it helps you to think differently about the way you perceive things and experience the world around you. Artists have to live, so selling their work, I would 100% encourage. And there's all kinds of different art markets. There's not just one art market. So the cutting edge contemporary art market is based on perceived value, which means that it's not necessarily, it's not the labor, the time, or just, you know, it's a mixture of a lot of people from over the world coming together and assigning value at any one point. And when you get even further into the nitty gritty, there are an elite number of people who have access to the kind of wealth, but also that have the kinds of collections that commercial galleries want their artists to be placed in order to generate legacy for their artists. So there are a limited number of commercial galleries that can, with those networks of those amazing people. So it's not, money doesn't necessarily make you a great collector. Having an eye and learning the language of art and really committing deeply to an artist's trajectory in their life and what they bring to the world. You know, there are a number of those people across the world, and there are lots of people in the art world that are fighting to get their artists in front of those people so that they become one of the anointed, if you like. So I have been on all sides where I've sold artworks to collections, major collections, individual collections, public collections, and attended art fairs in Basel and Barcelona and Rotterdam. So I've seen it all the way through, and I know every single collector is different, just like every human is different, because they're all nuanced with their own lens, their own psychological makeup. And so, in a way, trying to sell an artwork to those people, it's like trying to align planets. You know, it's the right person in the right mood at the right time at the right day, when they haven't just sold or they haven't seen a work by somebody that they're really fired up by. So it's actually really hard to sell art. It's really hard to make a living as a gallerist from art. So a lot of gallerists are as philanthropic as the artists that they work with. it takes years to build up value for your artist, you know, and it can certainly take 2 to 3 years to build a market for an artist. So that's the kind of the cutting edge contemporary art world. Within that, there are amazing people like Acute Art that are doing some really interesting things with selling work online, and they've got a massive Instagram following, and Canopy Collections, who are Louise Shuniak, who's going to feature in my latest Elevation blog post, is doing something great, curating and selling work online. So, but there are lots of people who are using the new tools of today to put art in front of people who are happy to click and buy. And so we've now got this kind of bricks and clicks world where there's a mixture of having galleries that show great work and then having great work online. But if you start selling work for megabucks, then actually it needs some kind of relationship. So you need to nurture the relationship around the work. So I'll give you an example, Hayden. If you've made 10 paintings in a year, okay, now you as an artist are going to feel very wedded and connected to those works. You are going to feel passionately that they go into the hands of what you would think are the right people. So you will have a say in that. So if the Tate came knocking, I would imagine that you'd be very happy to sell a work to the Tate. Now, the Tate probably won't be able to pay full price because they're a public collection. You know, they usually rely on benefactors or patrons or people actually donating works so that they can build a collection for the nation. So the rest of the 9 paintings, you'd be then looking for the people who can pay the right price for them, but also have an incredible collection. And what they might do for you is, if they've got an incredible collection, let's say the Broad collection in LA, you know that the work is going to get shown to a public. It's going to go into a museum and it's going to be brought out into a collection. Therefore, it's not just shoved in somebody's basement or cellar for only their eyes to see. Therefore, that's going to guarantee more eyes on your work. That's going to generate more sales in future. It's going to generate longevity for your career. So when you've only got 10 artworks, having somebody who's helped you to find the right people for your work so that you can create more ripple effects, that they can help you find the right custodians, people that want to share or loan the work or produce a catalogue maybe because they want to support you. You can see how quickly and easily it comes. Actually, you can't possibly make enough work to put it into the hands of every single person who wants one. So therefore, the value of your work goes up and you have to be more discerning about who it goes to. Now, the other part of the art market is you perhaps selling on Ceri online or one of the other kind, Artsy online, one of the other kind of online platforms where you get a lot of eyes on your work and people can browse in lots of different ways. So, you know, there are all kinds of artists making all kinds of work on those platforms and they make an amazing living. Some of those artists make a better living than the artists who are going down this slightly more exclusive model, if you like, which is more like a luxury brand kind of model. So imagine it's like haute couture, and then there's like a number of diffusion lines. So you get your mega galleries, then you get your kind of mid-tier, then you get your emerging galleries and grassroots that also sell. And then you get online platforms, and they all take different percentages and they all do different things for their artists. So one of the best things you can do is to really look at your work super honestly and talk to people really honestly about, you know, who do you think is making work like me? Where do you think my market is? Where do you think my tribe are? Do I belong in this cutting edge world? Am I making something that speaks about the ideas of our time? Or am I making work that actually anybody can live with, and I'm happy as a clam if it goes on their walls, in which case there's a lot more options for you now than there've ever been before. I hope that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, it's made me ponder and debate like my whole strategy and what I want to do as an artist and where do I want to go forward. And I'm really questioning now because like the as a society we've become a lot more digital, and as you said, there's options there, and there's the ability to just scroll on your phone, on your laptop, and just be able to view so much art in abundance. Whereas before, in a more traditional setting, you're having to go out to a gallery, speak to people, and seek out what, if you are interested in buying a piece. So, in your opinion, it seems like the route to success for an artist. There's a lot more options. It's a lot more varied now, and I think it's become more accessible as you've talked on wealth and such. Now, like pretty much all of us have got some kind of smartphone, and therefore the ability to take high quality images. And now resources are very easy, yeah, compared to like decades ago. So like you can acquire paints, canvases, or whatever your medium is. It's all quite achievable to attain it. So do you think it's now a better environment for artists, or is it worse? Because I suppose it's better because it's more accessible, but then it becomes more saturated. So, what, in your opinion, would you say it's better or worse?
I think more people being creative is always going to be a good thing.
Mm.
I guess it's the same as saying, you know, because there's being creative and then there are the industries that support people being creative. So they're two different things. I would say it's brilliant that there are many more instant creative tools for everybody to have a bit of creativity in their life. And I really would encourage everyone to find their, you know, whatever it floats their boat, whether it's writing poems or making paintings, whatever it is, there's a way that you can do it relatively affordably and cheaply. So I love that. I also love the fact that there are loads more learning opportunities. Like you have your YouTube channel, you know, there are so many opportunities to learn without having to spend a lot of money. There are pros and cons when there is a huge market for everything, of course, you know, and there's something about, you know, going to trusted, you might call them gatekeepers, you might call them specialists, you might call them people who are dedicated their life to it. But if you want to know what kinds of themes and ideas are bubbling up at the forefront of your field, then you're kind of looking at the roots for those kinds of people in your tribe. So I would say generally, I think it's brilliant that there's loads more people that want to help and sell artists' work. I think you do need to do your research about what percentage people take, about what track record they've got, what knowledge is being shared around the work. Because I think there's one thing in buying JPEGs, you know, or images, and there's another thing with actually understanding what it is to live with art, care for art, have a relationship with an artist, you know, have that kind of creative dialogue that you get if you make friends with an artist, or you understand the way they think and see the world. That can be so incredibly rewarding. So I think there's a number of different things. There's a number of different levels. It's like any enthusiasm. If you become an enthusiast, you realize the more you learn about your subject, the less you know. And I think that's brilliant because it's a thing. So it's if you study Aikido or, you know, yoga, or you go cycling, it's that thing, is that the more you learn, the more you see how much more you could learn. And I think art's a bit like that. Once it gets under your skin, you start saying, right, okay, so you might start by being interested in, I don't know, Salvador Dali or the Pre-Raphaelites or Andy Warhol. And then you get a thirst for knowing a bit more. And then you go down a rabbit warren and you find out a bit more. And then you suddenly notice there are more contemporary artists around where you live than you realised. And then you start maybe going to a few exhibitions or a few previews. And then you realise this kind of work floats my boat. So you might even start buying small scale works at under £250 on things like Artist Support Pledge, which was set up by the amazing Matthew Burrows. And, you know, you may well start researching for artists like that and noticing some threads, and that gives you extra other avenues to follow. So I would say, in short, I think it's a better time for earning money from your art than has ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but what I do think, it means you have to be more organized and disciplined about where you want to put your time. You have to protect your time fiercely and schedule or calendar your creative time so that it's at the best time in the day. So you're not wasting your best hours on doom scrolling or like going down an avenue of like looking or researching online. Because actually, when you do become your own advocate, you can quite easily be spend all your time looking over your shoulder what everyone else is doing without really digging into, what's right for me, who's right for me. So you focus on less people but go deeper. That's what I would recommend.
That's an incredibly insightful answer, and it makes me. Well, you said you're an optimist. I'm very much an optimist as well, so I feel relief in your answer. And one thing I noticed, or I suppose in well, just way back in like school days of prolific artists, you learn about throughout history and the kind of the lifestyles they lived, what their sort of experience was like. And then when I went to college, it kind of exposed me of, well, I suppose going from school to college, I saw it was the first time you was able to wear your own thing and express yourself. But where I'd normally been in a setting around people that even on like own clothes day or whatever, it's very much like t-shirt, joggers, or like jeans and joggers, whatever it is, very normal, I guess. And anything kind of looked as outside of that norm was judged and ridiculed. And then you go to college and you can literally just like wear whatever you want, express yourself however you want, have a green mohican, you can wear a vest and have all kinds of prints on it, holes in it. Like there was some amazing outfits and all kinds of characters when I was at college studying art. But one thing that was prevalent was I suppose, the mental journey that people had. I've found in art, in the art industry, or just being around artists, there's definitely this prevalence of like I guess a mental emotional struggle. There's been trauma, but that's allowed a huge creative outlet. And often when people, some of the most successful pieces that we saw for like final project pieces and such came from something of like huge trauma and was a way that people were able to kind of cope and release that. Do you think that plays a huge part in art, or is it's just a way that people have found to cope? Is it something that helps create better art, or is it still perfectly fine if you've gone through life and it's been quite smooth sailing? It's still an opportunity there to create wonderful art. Do you think?
Hmm. Well, I think there is a place for art as therapy, and there is a place for art healing. I would say pretty much every artist I know needs to do it. That's the difference between like professional artists and artists that are committed to doing it. Is that it's a burning desire to do it, even though it's challenging. I would say for me personally, the best work is work where even if the work isn't super personal, isn't coming from a place of trauma, but that the person is digging deep.
Mm.
They have a well of inner knowledge, emotion, relationships to their experiences that they can somehow channel into what they're making. So there's something about, the way that you're raised, the experiences that you've been through, everything informs, your senses, the way you see, feel, hear, smell, touch. And so we are a kind of product of our context, but we also learn all of these new things on a daily basis. So there's a processing of our way of being in the world that happens as an artist. And so in that processing, sometimes if somebody is able to articulate something in an artwork that they can't articulate in another way, say through the written word or through music, but maybe it's a visual piece, there's something about that somatic experience and the way the body relates to makes us taps into something where we know we have a kind of a full body and intellect knowing when we stood in front of something. So the way something is made definitely informs how you feel about it or how you receive it. And what artists channel when they're making it is a product of all their experiences. So there are artists who prefer to speak about what they think are universal issues, but it's always coming from a very particular perspective. It can't not do, because of where you're born, how you were raised, all of those things go into it. So for me, when I see an artist avoiding their own personal authentic self, whether they're masking, whether they're trying to obfuscate or trying to skirt around something and hide in the work, I can actually feel the difference. So I know when someone's stuck, or when they're blocked, or when they're not able to tap into that. So I feel the best artists, even if the work isn't directly about themselves, it will be informed by their lens, the way they've moved through the world. So I think the best work for me really does, is like unashamedly themselves. They can't help but be themselves. Most artists that I know have a little bit of embarrassment about the flavour of their work. They would rather it was somebody else's, and very often they get seduced by a work that doesn't look like theirs, and they think, oh yeah, that looks great because it looks like someone else's, and then they realise actually, they have to come back to their own voice and their own way of making. So I think that really art is about communicating, and sometimes we surprise ourselves what we want to communicate to the world. And it comes from a very deep place, a hidden place. But I think when it speaks to somebody else, it's because they recognize something that's not been said, or has not been felt, or they've not been able to articulate themselves. That's the best kind of work.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an incredible, I suppose, way of communicating to people, way of breaking down barriers, and it's way of, like, if you have experienced trauma or something that's been a challenge, it's a way to channel that and be able to process it. But also, if you're like particularly ostracized, or when it comes to like political human rights incentives, it's a way of being able to communicate a message so beautifully and peacefully without having to use words, without having to use aggression or force. I wonder how many wars could have been avoided if people were painting more pictures and trying to express themselves in that way.
Well, it's interesting. So many warmongers actually hide the art, don't they, or steal or loot the art, because they know that actually it's the soul of a nation in so many ways. So that's happened throughout histories, unfortunately, where beautiful cultural things have been ransacked, stolen, or destroyed because it's so important to the legacy of a culture.
Ceri, it's been a wonderful conversation. Honestly, I could talk to you all day long. I have so many questions, but I'm trying to think of your time. But thank you so much for coming on. But there is one final question I ask every guest, and that is, what is one thing within the world today you hope will be eradicated in the future?
Oh, wow. It's a really tough one, because it's just all going to sound cheesy. Like, I'm just going to sound like Miss World. Like, I just want world peace. And I think, well, I have to say that I think if we all do become more aware of our unconscious biases, then we can actually proactively do something about making proper change to abolish all of the isms that hold so many people back. And I think awareness is key. So I think if I could abolish one thing, maybe it was kind of the things that we use to numb ourselves, I guess. And that's a huge thing to eliminate, because I've also obviously been at the receiving end of enjoying some of the things that we use to buffer or numb ourselves, whether it's drink or, social media, or, whatever it is that takes us away from realizing our reality. But I think there's so much that is immobilizing our ability to take action right now, because we're in a state of confusion. So I would say it's the big ball of confusion that has been created. So perhaps I'd eradicate that mass confusion. So there's some clarity, so we can see more clearly what kind of idiots are leading us to world destruction, basically.
It's a different answer. I like it. Very interesting. It feels like we've been talking for 15 minutes, and yet we've been saying, what is it? Almost an hour of talking, and yet it feels like 15 minutes. I've learned so much. It's been so much value, and thank you so much for giving me your time, Ceri. It's been wonderful.
Very welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope it's added something to what you're up to. I think it's brilliant that you're speaking to so many different people. So yeah, good luck, and I will continue to listen, and I'll share it too.
Oh, amazing. Thanks so much. Well, there we go. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. That's something that brought a lot of value to me, and I'm sure it did for you. And make sure to tune in next week when we're talking to Matt LaFlame from the Finding Fire podcast.